I'm still surprised that some people were surprised when I pointed to the fact that if a highway was built for the purpose of dividing a white and a black neighborhood, or if an underpass was constructed such that a bus carrying mostly black and Puerto Rican kids to a beach, or that would have been, in New York was designed too low for it to pass by, that obviously reflects racism that went into those design choices.
All right, now that's actually not true, but what he's doing here is kind of showing off to a certain group out there, media people, that he's read a book called The Power Broker by Robert Carroll about Robert Moses. He was the chairman of the Port Authority here in New York like 70 years ago. Very important, very influential guy who built roads and bridges and helped shape a lot of American infrastructure. The media, they love this book. Actually, the New York Times noticed when everybody was Zooming from home, you know, all those interviews, behind the reporters and behind the pundits, the talking heads, they'd always see that book somewhere on the bookshelf behind these guys. It was one of those books. It's like 1,000 pages long. Everybody says they've read it. I think very few actually have. But here's the thing. The book is good. The book is great, actually, but it's not perfect. No book is. And the idea that Robert Moses built the bridges to keep black and Hispanic kids away from the beach, that's actually wrong. He made a mistake. Now, the bridges, this is a rendition back in 1930 or so. You can see it's curved and it would be hard for a truck or a bus to get through there. Let me see another picture. More recently, these are definitely lower bridges, prohibitive for commercial traffic, like a lot of parkways are. Here's the deal, though. When these bridges were created, there were hardly any people of color in New York City. I'd like to show you this quote from New York intellectual and writer Seth Barron. In 1930, New York City was whiter than the state of Maine is today. So the idea that any urban planning measure taken then was racist against black people and Puerto Ricans is preposterous. And let's dig into the numbers. In 1930, when these parkways were going up here in the New York area, in New York City, only 4.73% of the population was African American. We do not believe that was on his mind when he was creating those bridges. But hey, it's in the book. Media types love to say they read the book when they really didn't, and they love the way it looks, so they just take it as gospel. Back to Mayor Pete. He's the Secretary of Treasury, living large at the podium. So large that he doesn't even have to come to work. He took 3 months of paternity leave. And why should he work? I mean, the media, they're just enthralled with this guy. You saw what they did during the campaign. Now, no kidding, Amazon has made a movie about him, starring him.
I talked about coming out. That was for everybody who's tried to figure out how to be who they are. The challenge, of course, is how do you master the game?
I mean, this guy is just too much, too much. He was mayor of South Bend for 8 years, but 3 of those years at least he spent doing things that had nothing to do with South Bend. The run for president, okay? That took about a year. Let's see, he ran for chief of the Democrat National Committee. He wanted to be the head of the Democrat Party. You have to campaign for that. You have to go all over the country. And then he found that backdoor way into the military. He signed some paperwork. He never went to boot camp or officer candidate school and got himself a desk job at the airport in Afghanistan. This guy is such a careerist. And now that he is in the cabinet, he's transportation secretary. That's a big job. And what does he do? He takes 3 months off to look after the newborn. That's just not right. Now, how does he get away with all this? I mean, why him? Why does he even have a cabinet job? Why would a small-town mayor be taken seriously when he runs for president? Quite frankly, it has to do with his orientation, his sexual orientation. And here's proof. You can count it up. The New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, all of them, they could not stop writing about this guy being gay. You saw it in the movie that he's obviously participating in. Being gay, I mean, it's almost like a full-time job. I could care less. And by the way, the first open, out of the closet, if you will, gay person in a presidential cabinet was Rick Grinnell, who served as Director of National Intelligence under Donald Trump. I, by the way, don't think he has much in the way of political skill. Watch this little exchange he had in South Carolina when he was still running for president.
Can you say to us today, in front of all these cameras, that Black Lives Matter.
Did you just ask me if Black Lives Matter?
Yes, we want to hear you
Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter.
Then fire your car!
South Carolina, we saw the limits of his political ability. They didn't like him. He actually didn't seem to like them too much either. It was a bit of a disaster there in South Carolina. And now we're all seeing, again, the limits of his administrative ability, of his ability to govern. We have a serious supply chain crisis. Look at all those ships off the coast of California. And we have a transportation secretary who is busy making movies and talking about racism in your bridge.